My name is Ros Kesting. I live in Pretoria in Linwood Ridge and was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2002. I think it was 2, it could have been 3, but I think it was 2. And I found a vein underneath my arm that was particularly sore and throbbing. So I went to the doctor saying I had a thrombosis, and he said, don't be silly, you can't get them in your arm. So he sent me to have a sonar, and they picked up unusual lymph glands in my chest. 2 in particular, or 3, and they were bigger than they should have been. So then they sent me to a surgeon. The surgeon then said, okay, he'd do a biopsy and take these lymph glands out to see the problem. But he said to me, he thought he'd treat me first for milk duct inflammation. So he first of all treated me for that, and in the meantime went to the gynae. The gynae was horrified. She said, please go back to this guy in 6 weeks immediately, don't leave it. I said, okay. So I went back to him in 6 weeks, and he sent me for more sonars. This time they found more lymph nodes that were swollen, and the previous ones had trebled in size. So then he did the biopsy, and he said, it won't take long, I'll be in and out, and that's it. Well, I woke up at 6 o'clock in the evening with my mom next to my bed, and I said, what am I doing here? And they said, oh, they're very sorry, but the doctor came in and said he'd found numerous lymph nodes that were carcinogenic. Oh, he didn't tell me that straight away. He said that were suspect, I think. Anyway, waited for the results. I had to sleep in overnight. I had the hugest scar under my arm. Waited for the results, which was agonizing, because I wanted to know what it was all about, obviously. And by the Wednesday, I phoned the rooms, and the nurse wouldn't give me the results. So then you imagine the worst. And we went in to go and see the doctor, and he said he's terribly sorry, it's carcinogenic. So that was a very fancy word for cancer. We had to go home, because he then said I had to go to an oncologist, and he would book me in. And on the way home, my husband said, let's pretend you've got flu, and the doctor's going to give you medicine to make you better. Which I thought was quite a nice way of putting it. I was not petrified at the time. I think there's so much that has to go through your brain that you don't think either way. You don't think bad things, and you don't think good things. You think, how long is it going to take to get better? Anyway, I went to see the doc, and I evidently had a very peculiar cancer of the breast. I didn't have any lumps or peas under my arm or whatever. The whole breast was the tumor, and they weren't quite sure how to treat me. So he said, okay, we're going to give it a bash. We're going to give you the medication, the chemo, for 5 months, see if it reduces the tumor, and then we'll remove the breast and go from there. So I started the chemo, which was no problem at all. I felt as fit as a fiddle. Didn't have any. Once I think I oopsed, but it was always 5 days later, or I was a bit gnar.
What do you mean by oopsed?
I was sick.
Huh.
I vomited after feeling gnar. But that only once. Other times I was just gnar. I hate being sick, so I think maybe I held it in or something. But I wasn't sick. And I felt perfect on chemo. I sailed through it. And after the 5 months, they test, obviously you have blood tests every month or every 3 weeks or whatever it is, and they tested and they said that it had reduced and now they could remove the breast. I was stage 4 when I was first diagnosed, and the doctor was so thrilled. I mean, it was as if I'd done it all, but if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today. And then he said, okay, off with the breast now, and I was horrified. I thought, if it's better, why must I take it off? And then came the big decision. Do you take 1 off or do you take 2 off? They give you the choice. I chose 1 because I thought I wouldn't be feminine enough if I took both off. Very bad decision. If I had to do it all over again, I would take them both off at the same time, because 1 boob doesn't cut it. The bras, the expense that you have to go through for years, for the rest of your life, is awful. Anyway, the operation was successful. According to the doctors, everything was fine. I lost all my hair. Oh, my hat. 19 to 20 days after your first chemo, your hair starts to fall out. The hair on your body, your face, your eyelashes, your eyebrows, your private parts, you lose all that hair. And it's sort of itchy, so you do this, and I had this lump of hair. I happened to be in the theatre watching a play in London, and I continued to pull my hair out right through the show. And my daughter said when we got back to the flat, well, the advice was, when your hair starts to fall out, shave it off, because the feeling of your hair dropping onto your shoulders gives you a real thrill. So I sat in her kitchen and she shaved my head, and there were many tears from all of us. She was crying, I was crying, Rudolph was crying. So for me, the most traumatic thing during this whole thing is losing your hair. I had got a wig before I left South Africa, and I just went on holiday to see my daughter. Thought it would be a good idea between the first treatment and the second one. And the first morning I put the wig on, and they said put on the top of a pantyhose, tie a knot in it, because it prickles on your head, which is perfectly right. Put on the wig, and the wind was howling in London. It was summer, so it wasn't too bad. And I spent the day with my hand on my head, holding my wig on. Anyway, it's a long story, but we went on holiday, and I thought, this is ridiculous, this wig. So I got a bandana, and I wore the bandana for a couple of months, and then gave that up also as a bad job, and because it was very hot. It was summer, hot in South Africa, and it prickled, and it was blah. So it was much nicer to be without. And yeah, too bad, you know, you've got no hair in your head, that's fine. Then it grew back between the operation of removing the breast and having more chemo, and it grew back black and curly. And I've never been black or curly, I've always been blonde and thin hair, I mean. And then we started the chemo again, and the hair fell out again. Fortunately came back my normal colour the second time. But anyway, Rudolph was a great what's the word I'm looking for?
Cheerleader.
Support of everything that was going on. But I drove myself to my own chemo and I went to work straight afterwards. Keep your mind busy, keep your mind off thinking about things. You just carry on with what you're doing and hope every month gets better and better and better. And it did. Everything got better. My friends were very supportive, of course shocked in the beginning. People are very scared of the C word. They don't want to say cancer. I mean, even the surgeon wouldn't say cancer. He said carcinogenic, and I had to think, carcinogenic. I wonder what that means.
Sounds worse than cancer.
Yeah, it sounded worse. But you must talk about it because it makes you stronger. It makes you aware that you are sick, and if it isn't for the doctors that we have today, I wouldn't be here. And all my faith was in them. I knew that they were going to give me the right medication. There were strange side effects, dry mouth, dry eyes, dry whatever, that got worse when you took this other muti for 5 years after you declared cancer-free, where they take away all your estrogen. That was awful because the dryness is unbelievable, and you can't put enough cream on to alleviate the itching. I'm itchy just thinking about it. And as far as the friends were concerned, they're much more worried than you are. Are you all right? Yes, I'm fine. Are you sure you're all right? That eventually you want to scream because if the next person says, are you all right? Yes, I'm fine. And Rudolph was clever. Instead of getting phone calls, he emailed all our friends and gave them a weekly update on the patient. And it was lovely because I didn't get all the phone calls that you think, oh golly, yeah. You haven't thought about it because you were baking or you were sewing or you were doing something. Then you get this phone call to say, how are you feeling? Oh, yeah, I'm feeling fine. Are you sure? Yes, no, I'm fine. So people are very worried. And I had lots of prayers said for me, which was wonderful. And I had lots of prayers said for me, which made me realize how caring your friends and community are. People you know, people you don't know. It was a lovely feeling to be cared for, cared about. And without everybody, I'm sure you don't get through it as easily. That's my story.